Hey everybody, if you don't know me, my name is Maria, and as you can tell from the title of the video, it's going to be my experience having been homeless in the UK. If there's a glare in my glasses, I'm really sorry, please just try to ignore it. Don't let it distract you from the message of the video. So, for context, I didn't even know that I was classified as homeless, what you'd call homeless. Like, I'm sure many people, when you think of homeless, the first thing that comes to mind is, someone on the streets, begging, etc., etc. And it can be that, but homelessness can also mean when you're couch surfing or, having to move in, live with certain relatives, such as was my case.
You don't have to be in the street to be homeless.
Homeless is sofa surfing, overcrowding, being evicted.
You still have the same anxiety about it, like you have no permanent residence.
No, I haven't got permanent residence at the moment.
Even living in a shelter, living in a hostel is still homeless.
I was living with people who were addicted to drugs, and the police were having to be called.
Grown men will open the door, they'd walk in, you didn't know who they were.
I was sofa surfing for months and months.
The problem is you're sleeping on someone else's couch, so you end up falling out. How many phones have you stayed on
when you're under people's feet and it just gets too much.
And I'm first going to speak about what my life was before I was homeless, so I can give context to, the great shift, like how I became homeless, how it impacted me, etc., etc. Before becoming homeless, I've spent basically just about my whole life with my mum. And my mum had a very well-paying job, a high-paying job. She's had positions such as CEO and regional director, all that kind of stuff, making six figures, corporate. You can, connect the dots, right? And this was primarily in the UK. She was earning money in pounds, and I believe that's also significant because I'm sure people know how strong the pound is, GBP. And yeah, in these different jobs, it would have my mum living in different countries, and at one point, it meant me living with her in Kenya. Again, I'm only mentioning this so you guys know what my life was like before we basically lost everything. We lived in a flat in Kenya, an apartment, and I'll look it up online and put pictures here all around the video so you guys can see. And this apartment, the living room was massive. It had a massive kitchen, massive master bedroom with a jacuzzi. It was 3 bedrooms. It even had a separate massive washroom. The house was really big. It was really luxury. And the apartment complex that we lived in, it came with all the amenities you can imagine, like a swimming pool, a sauna, a gym, just everything. And even when we were in the UK, we are in the UK, but when we left Kenya to come back to the UK, the house we lived in, my mum owned it. Of course, she had a mortgage on it, but it was hers, in her own name. And all along, yeah, that's what we were used to. I didn't even realize how, I guess you could say, privileged or well off I was until we lost everything. Honestly, I was a child, I was really young. Usually youth, you're not really aware of these things, money, class. You're literally just a child living your life, right? Fast forward, 4th September 2016, my mum had a stroke. She became sick, and as you can imagine, that turned our life upside down. If any of you watching, a loved one or just someone who's had a stroke, you know how it can change their life significantly. So my mum went from being, hyper independent, making her own money, just doing everything on her own, to now, because if you don't know what stroke is, it's basically when there's a blood clot on your brain, and depending on what side of the brain it hits, it causes paralysis. So in my mum's case, the stroke was on the left side of her body, which caused complete right side paralysis. So what I want you to imagine someone's body literally divided in two, and the entire right side is numb, it doesn't move, she can't move her hand. She could walk, but she recently broke her hip, so she can't even walk anymore. She's housebound, just something. So obviously the stroke was in 2016, so that was 8 years ago. And prior to this, my mum did have loans and stuff that she had gotten from the government, but obviously because of her high paying jobs and stuff, she was making frequent payments towards it, whatever. But now suddenly she became sick. And for context, how I mentioned we lived in Kenya? I left Kenya a few months earlier than my mum, and I believe we left Kenya to come back to the UK 2015. I was to come the summer of 2015 to come back to the UK, and my mum came that winter. And obviously my mum left her job. I think she was tired of her job in Kenya. And she knew all along that she would come to the UK and just get another job in the UK, because getting a job was never hard for her. She's very qualified. She's got a very strong CV. In fact, I was going through old images and stuff. Literally just under, I believe, 2 months before my mum got the stroke, I found a video of when she did an interview. There's interviews where they make you record yourself and submit a video.
Hi, this video is in response for your call for international speakers. My name's Grace. I'm the author of Lives and Livelihood. How anyone can go beyond negativity and lead a great and happier life. I believe I'm the best candidate for this role because of my knowledge, skills, and experience, my attitude to life and to work, but also because I have this itching dream, this great dream to change very many people's lives and transform the way they live. I have served at senior executive levels in 5 international NGOs, delivering strategic applications in different countries, 18 in Africa, 6 in Asia, and here in the UK. I believe I can do what this job requires because I've acquired a lot of transferable skills which I can bring into this role. I can plan, I can organize, I can mobilize, and I can write reports. I can address huge audiences, large audiences, important audience with courage. But I am also a good trainer, so I can always work with people of different calibers. In terms of my work, when I get a job, I'm driven. Trust me, you wouldn't have to supervise me. Once I understand it, I go with it, ask along if it is new to me, and mobilize others to work together. I work very well with other people because I have high levels of emotional intelligence, which I always bring into my job. But I'm also somebody who can concentrate and do a particular piece of work on my own until I finish it. I'm driven. To me, failure is not an option, and I'm always focused on results, but I also enjoy having something that is qualitative. So shoddy work is not an option for me, but at the same time, I'm not a perfectionist. This dream of mine is to change people's lives, and I believe through black card books, I can do this. This could really be my opportunity. Please give me this chance. Don't be worried because I'll not disappoint you. I'm very committed to learning. I come from a very humble background, and through self-training, self-learning, emulating others, I'm what I am. I moved away from being a secondary school teacher to a chief executive of an international organization here in the UK. I learn very well. I will copy you. I will emulate you. I will practice and prepare until I master what I'm doing. I believe 5 years from now, I will be one of these most inspirational, persuasive speakers because I know if I access all the tools and the energy you are putting into black card books, I will excel. I'll not disappoint you. They say great people climb on the shoulders of giants. I see you as a giant I could learn from and emulate and become the person that I want to be and leave the legacy that I want to leave to this world. Thank you.
My mum left that job in Kenya because she knew she was going to get one in the UK. Anyway, so now she's back in the UK. Between the period of when she came back to the UK and her having the stroke, I don't know if she already had money saved up, which is how she was still paying the mortgage or whatever, but some way the bills, everything was being paid. Like, unfortunately, my dad didn't contribute. It was always my mum who paid, you know, for everything, etc. Right? So my mum gets sick, and suddenly you can imagine in these corporate fields and the kind of jobs my mum would work, it would be very active, having to travel, airplane, whatever. And now she became almost like bedbound. She couldn't walk. She was in hospital. I don't know if it was for a month from when she got the stroke and then she came back home, but like our whole world turned upside down. And now because she no longer had that income coming in, now suddenly the crisis, she couldn't afford her mortgage anymore, no more money. She couldn't afford her loans that she was repaying, the car, literally everything. Like, imagine going from 6 figures, making a good living, to now suddenly having nothing, zero. And obviously right now she is on government assistance, government benefits, but even that was difficult. Like, I believe it took her maybe even 3 years to even get benefits, because even just explaining it to the government was hard, because obviously when they look at their system, they saw once upon a time she was making 6 figures, so well off. So it's like, you know what I mean? They didn't really want to give her because they were thinking you made this much money, then you're not having to explain she's now sick, she's lost everything. So even her getting benefits was such a difficult and hard procedure simply because of just how well off she was before. So yeah, like I said, because she no longer had income coming in, she could no longer afford the mortgage. So what did she have to do? She had to now sell the house. So that house we lived in that was my home for many years, my family home. She had to sell it. And in the midst of all of this, because obviously also, like I mentioned, you know how I said my mom paid everything, my dad completely refused to contribute whatsoever. Like, that's a whole other topic, you know, failed marriage, sham marriage. I don't even know if you'd consider that a marriage at all. It was just awful, yeah? That's a topic for another day. Watch my video on daddy issues if you want a bit more context, but yeah. So that happened. So she sold the house, and she knew all along that through selling that house that would use that money to get another place, you know, move somewhere else, maybe rent out some place, whatever, cool. At this point I was, how old was I? 15. Obviously at that age I'm a child, I don't really know how to search for houses, but I was still trying to help her on, you know, these typical sites, Rightmove, Zoopla, all of this, trying to find a house. And guys, I kid you not, every single house we put an offer for, every single house we tried renting or whatever, something mysteriously always went wrong. Like, something always fell through. We just had no success. Like, imagine you get a house and you think, yeah, I'm gonna get it, and then suddenly, oh, someone else took it, or like, there was just these weird things that kept happening that it couldn't have been a coincidence. Looking back now, maybe it wasn't God's will, because obviously you can imagine I was a child living with my mum alone when she's sick. At that age, it would have been, you know, too much of a burden on me. So now I have an older brother, one of my older brothers. I have 4 brothers. He's the 3rd oldest. He saw that things were not working, and obviously eventually my dad did end up just leaving us. He abandoned us. He walked away. I went to live with another woman that he was committing adultery on my mum on. We love a bit of trauma dumping, don't we? So yeah, my brother saw how we were finding literally no success in getting any house, like nothing was working. So one day he just spoke to my mum and said, you and Maria, move in with me, live with me. Bear in mind, he lived in a 1-bedroom council flat. But what other option did we have? So we moved in with him. And because, like I mentioned, it was a 1-bedroom, obviously the bedroom was his. So what happened is he had to transform his living room to our bedroom. And it was very small. You know, it's better than nothing. It was like a small box. I did try doing a little drawing because I don't have any pictures. I have a bad habit that when a season of my life ends, I usually delete all the pictures and stuff associated. So any pictures I may have had of that house, I don't have it unless I was to ask my brother for it because he still lives in the house now. But yeah, it was essentially my mum had her hospital bed that was provided by the government. Then I slept on a mattress on the floor. It's like, you guys can imagine the great shift from living in these luxury apartments, owning your own house, everything, to now having to, in my mum's case, live with her son, who is my brother, and I'm from having my own bedroom. In fact, even being spoiled for choice because we would have extra bedrooms. I could decide wherever I wanted to sleep, and I was sleeping on the floor. Yeah, and we lived with my brother, I believe, I'll probably put the dates here somewhere. But yeah, we lived with him for nearly 5 years, and yeah, that was our new life now. Homeless. It was a very great shift. Another thing that also inspired me to make this video is I watched a video. I'll link it in the description. I'll also put maybe a screenshot of the thumbnail here. And it was like things not to say to homeless people. And I believe they just got a bunch of homeless people from the UK. And it was in that video that I actually found out that I was what you'd consider homeless. I never knew I was homeless because I wasn't on the streets. But yeah, there were some people in that video, they weren't actually on the streets, but maybe they were couch surfing, you know, moving from house to house. And even sometimes, as much as, you know, their relatives and stuff. And this is not to condemn anyone or to throw anyone under the bus. But, you know, after a while, it's almost like overstaying your welcome. Like, people can only be hospitable for so long, but then after a while, you know, when you can sense that maybe the person doesn't want you living with them anymore. And that was such as my case. It was clear. But my brother, he did his part, man. He looked after us for 5 years. But you know, he's also a young man. I'm sure he would have wanted to live with like a wife. He's married now, by the grace of God. My mom and I living with him, I feel like it blocked a lot of things for him. He had to put his life basically on standstill just to look after us. So that became my new life, living off government assistance. And like I said, you know, I mentioned, you could see the pattern in my dad's character not wanting to contribute. And we eventually had to put him on, I believe it's called child support. No, in the UK it's called benefits, child benefits. Because he literally refused, like he didn't want to contribute whatsoever. You know, it's so crazy. For many years, my mum was paying the mortgage, the car. Even when we lived in Kenya, she was still paying the mortgage. She was literally the man in the relationship. She wore the pants. It's really sad how things are swapped and backwards, like men and women. And this, let me not get into that. Yeah, he completely refused. And then now when she became sick, after looking after, my mom looked after so many people, not just my dad. My mom looked after so many people. She helped so many people. The moment she became sick and lost everything, the very same people she helped, they were nowhere to be found. I just thought that you're helping people because you want them to help you back, but it's just the principle. It's crazy how some people, they only love you when you're up. When my mom was CEO, when she had these big jobs in these high places, people were kissing up to her, they wanted to be around her, but now suddenly that she lost everything, people they didn't want to know.
So then I remember me and my brother, we started asking for help, obviously, because I was 19, he was 20. So we was just asking like, oh, what do we do? Da, da, da. And then all of our problems had to be solved with money. But a lot of my mum's side of the family was leeching off of her. Okay. So it was just like, well, sort it out. Like, what do you want us to do? Like, da, da, da. And I was just like, wait, hold on, huh? And then after the funeral, they disowned us. whole mum side, they disowned us. Because it was just like, I'm not taking on the financial burden of these 2 kids when we needed her. Like, she was looking after us. Now you want us to look after them.
Right.
Haven't heard from them since. So it's just like, I'm very hardened individual.
Even in the video that I mentioned earlier about, you know, things not to say to homeless people, there was a guy in there and he said how he used to have such a well-off life. I believe he said he even had like lots of animals, everything. If you looked at him now, well, I don't know if he's still homeless, but at the time of that recording, if you saw him in his current situation being homeless, you would have no idea that once upon a time he had tens of thousands.
I used to have 40 odd grand in the bank, I had a couple of horses, I had a couple of dogs, I had land, I had a nice house in the middle of the countryside.
It's just crazy how life can change overnight.
Literally, one day we were sleeping in a 5-star hotel. The next day, I was homeless.
And it can happen to anyone. It's not even just about circumstances that you can't predict, like falling sick. It can also be things like just economic crashes. Think of things that have happened in society before, like in America, the Great Depression. What happened in 2020? I'm not going to say the name because YouTube, let's just call it Miss Rona. And during that period, many people were put off their jobs. I know, for example, in the UK, if your job wasn't what was considered priority, essential, like life and death, you had to shut down. So priority would be people, for example, that work in the medical field, people that run shops, etc. So people that had all these other jobs, like maybe being a hairdresser, or maybe you did sell goods but not like essentials like toothpaste, tissue, like you were out of business, like it was called a lockdown for a reason, no one could leave their house. Yes, literally this could happen to anyone.
It could be family problems,
Relation breakup.
financial problems, going bankrupt.
You see it all the time. You can be up here and then all of a sudden it's dropped here.
I cannot describe how quickly, and it shocked the hell out of me.
Just quickly to add a note, you know how I said when my mum got sick, all the same people that were in her life before, they were nowhere to be found. I remember at one point, my mum had, I believe, created a group chat with a bunch of people that she thought were her friends, you know, the people that liked her when she was CEO and stuff. And I believe my mum had wanted to start a new project or something, because obviously she's sick. Some people, when they get stroke, because obviously it's something that affects the brain, they lose all their memory, they become like a vegetable and stuff. But my mum, her stroke only affected her physically, her brain is still intact, like mentally she's still there, if that makes sense. But yeah, I believe because she was now stuck at home, couldn't walk, couldn't go physically to the workplace, anything, she thought, let me start a business from home. So she created like a group chat with all these people from her past. Guys, I kid you not, in that group chat that she created, one by one, people left. Every single person left. There were some people that were sending question marks like, oh, what's this? But you know, again, no condemnation to them, because you know, I guess also thinking about it now, I guess it just wasn't meant to be. God didn't want my mum to start that project or that business. And even how I mentioned prior, how we were using the money that my mum got from selling the house. We tried looking for other houses, but we couldn't get anything. I believe maybe it just wasn't meant to be. Maybe that wasn't God's plan. And obviously you can tell even from just where I'm sitting now, we're not homeless anymore. We don't live with my brother anymore. This is our house. We don't own it, we're renting. Off topic, tomorrow I will do a house tour. This is a fully accessible house because, like I mentioned, my mum had a stroke, she uses a wheelchair. Yeah, let me even explain how we even got to a point of having to stay in my brother's bedroom to now staying in the house we're in now. Essentially, there's the whole thing that happened in 2020. And unfortunately, my mum ended up catching, you know what, she got it. And when the paramedics came to where we lived, immediately they flagged it up, like, she can't live here, it's not suitable for someone who's sick. And then even me on the floor, like, it's a health and safety issue. You know, when you have people in those jobs, social security, what do you call it? Social services, you know how it is, like, and that began the journey of us eventually getting this house. And then we do have like a family friend who we met from church. She's a lawyer and she also was a great help. And now we live in a 2-bedroom flat. Like I said, it's fully accessible, a nice area. I'm literally in walking distance of a shopping center with everything. There's a McDonald's, there's a Lidl, there's a JD, there's a Superdrug, some Italian restaurant. Everything is here. We live near a park. Even the flats that we live in. Where I live, it's like there's flats in blocks. Let's give random name. Let's say my block is called Flower. Then there could be one called Rose, whatever. And each individual block has its own park. Like if I was to go downstairs now, there's a park with a bench. And you know, some people that have dogs and pets and stuff. There's places for dogs to walk. There's playgrounds for children. There's everything. And let me just refer to my notes. When we first became homeless, I never told anyone. As far as people were concerned, I was still living in that house that my mum owned. I remember just feeling so embarrassed. I remember when we moved in with my brother, there was, you know, issues with like mold, you know, like these old council houses. Of course, having shelter is better than nothing, but you can just imagine it was these very, very, very old council houses. In other areas, like let's say the States is what you'd call the projects. I don't know if I'd go as far as calling it the hood, but it was, yeah, it was really run down. Oh, and the place we live, this is a completely new apartment complex. So again, this is even a testimony, and it can give hope if anyone else is watching this and you're in the predicament that we were in a few years ago. I believe we moved in here April 2022. It's gonna be 3 years that we've been not homeless anymore. So also this video, I hope it gives others hope that their life can change around too. You may be in the predicament that I was in, sleeping on the floor, having to live with family members, and even feeling like your time is up. You know you're there, but they don't really want you there, etc, etc. You know how it is. Yeah, but like I said, I didn't tell anyone. I was so embarrassed, especially like I said, I was young. We lived with my brother from when I was maybe, let's just say starting from 14, like teenager, yeah? And you can imagine at that teenage age, people are having sleepovers, going to each other's houses. And I remember, for example, I'd go to friends' houses and then they'd be like, okay, Maria, next time let's go to your house, etc. And I'd always have to make excuses because people thought I still lived at my old house. I'd always give up some weird reason as to what happened. Not that I thought my friends at the time would judge me or would look down on me, but I didn't want anyone to know my current living situation. I didn't want people to know that I slept on the floor, that we lived in the living room, that we were, I guess, homeless. I did have one friend who kept insisting, like, Maria, when are we gonna go to your house? And I would always last minute make an excuse, or like, or you know what I would do? She would say, when are you gonna come? And then I'd maybe say, okay, you can come on Saturday. Then maybe right before I'd make up an excuse, oh, this came up, that came up. I should have just been truthful, man. But again, I was ashamed. I remember one time I had gone out late night and I was with a male friend at the time, and obviously him being, you know, a gentleman, he must have walked me home. And I remember as soon as he got to the door, I just immediately told him, okay, you can leave. And then I locked the door. But it's obviously he wanted to, like, you know, come in, speak to my mum, whatever. But I couldn't let that happen because I didn't want him to know. And even beyond not wanting him to know that I was homeless, I didn't want him to know that my mum was now disabled, sick. Like, those of you who have been in this situation, you may relate to the feeling ashamed, embarrassed of your situation. You know, you don't want people to know that you're poor. Like I said, we're no longer homeless. I could be living in our own place for nearly 3 years now. But you know, sometimes I do have those extreme thoughts, like fear of going back, fear of being in that predicament again. I've had intrusive thoughts, and you know, sometimes I could literally just be sitting here in this living room and I think to myself, I hope I don't end up on the streets. Like, I don't know why sometimes I have a bad gut feeling of ending up on the streets one day. Like, God forbid, I pray it doesn't happen. But you know, I used to be scared that that could happen. You know, sometimes I used to say to myself, Maria, if you ended up on the streets, what are you going to do? I used to look up videos of how they survive in the streets, you know, just in case I'd ever need to see it. And you know what's so crazy? You know how I said I didn't tell people about my situation because I was embarrassed? Sometimes when I had those intrusive thoughts about potentially being on the streets one day, sometimes I was even more worried about what people would think of me than the actual situation. Like, I'd be more scared of people seeing me. Like, maybe let's say they went to school with me and then one day they saw me just there on the streets. I'd be embarrassed of them seeing me like, oh, is that Maria that went to school with and she's down the streets? Again, it's just caring about what people think. And I did do a video, stop caring what other people think. It's just so crazy how sometimes caring about your perception, your public image can be so crippling. Yeah, and even despite not being homeless anymore, etc., we're still low income, you know, very low income. And in the thumbnail, you can see I put a picture of a woman on a phone call and holding many letters in her hands. Maybe some of you will be able to relate, maybe you can't, of having to constantly go back and forth to these companies, you know, direct debits. I remember there was a season where our rent went without being paid for months. And even if it's not the rent, you know, for example, obviously I live in the UK, calling up these different companies, whether it's British Gas or Thames Water, you know, like when you miss a payment, then how do I say it? I feel like this situation has given me anxiety in that I hate having to call companies. We're low income and sometimes we may not have enough to cover our direct debit, and obviously the direct debit is how much you pay monthly towards certain things, and you know, having to always call these companies back and forth like, oh, I can't afford this month, or could you please reduce the price, or could I pay next month, or could we set up this plan, or like, I don't know how many different phone calls I've had to have with different companies essentially trying to make arrangements. And then, you know, you get these letters when you miss a payment, threatening bailiffs, or we're gonna send someone to the house. In the UK, bailiffs is like, you know, when you owe a company or someone money, but you haven't paid, so now they send people to your house to collect things that would have been the equivalent. For example, there's that TV behind there. Let's say we owed maybe, I don't know, 500 and weren't able to produce the money, then they could send bailiffs to the house, and then they would collect the TV or like the phone. They would collect whatever they can that they believe could make up for the amount that you owe. And thankfully, this hasn't been a recurrent experience in my life, but there has been one instance when we lived with my brother. I remember I was just sleeping on the floor and I had the blanket over me. I don't know why I slept with myself covered. And then suddenly I heard these men enter the house. I now know it was bailiffs and they were coming because I guess my brother did have accumulated debts. And you can imagine, he already had his own debts, then having to add on the burden, having to look after his mum and his sister. It's really been something, man. You know how I mentioned how I've had to do multiple phone calls with all these different companies to set up payments and stuff? Guys, you know how like you go to the post and you check for mail, physical post, physical mail? because of all these phone calls and all these scary letters that I've gotten, I have anxiety opening letters. Like every single time I go downstairs, because our mailbox for the block I live in is downstairs, every single time I go downstairs and I see received mail, I feel troubled opening it because I'm thinking, what is it this time? Because I'm scared it's going to be another letter threatening, or you owe this much, or pay, otherwise we're going to send this, or that. Like, I'm literally scared opening mail, guys. I don't know if there's anyone that can relate. And you know, sometimes when you receive mail, if you look at the back of the letter, it will show you who the mail is from, who the letter came from. So sometimes I'll look at the back to see if I can see who it's from. Or like, you know, sometimes what I do, before reading the letter, I'll like remove the mail slowly to see who it's from. And like, if it says from like maybe the government or something, or like the borough, the area that I live in, immediately my heart drops and I panic, because I automatically think, oh no, are we in trouble? And my mum has high blood pressure, so when it's letters like that, sometimes I don't tell her and I just keep it to myself because she gets stressed very easily, and it's a lot, guys. It's a lot. And you know how I said that I slept on the floor for many years, and even when we had first moved into this house, I was still sleeping on the floor because obviously couldn't afford a mattress. In fact, most of the furniture that we have in our house here, it was literally given to us for free. You know, in the government, because of my mum's disability, she's entitled to certain things. And if it wasn't for certain things that were given because of my mum's disability, we would have no furniture. Like, we literally have just enough. What do you call it? When you live paycheck to paycheck, like paycheck to mouth, we can't afford furniture, guys. Like, we can't. We literally can just about afford, have the money for the rent and the food. Like, but I thank God for what we do have. That's why I said I'll do a house tour tomorrow. I did eventually end up getting a bed, but it wasn't my own money. The bed and mattress that I have now, it was gifted to me by two women from church, two church aunties. And, you know, I got so used to sleeping on the floor that I didn't care anymore, but it really did bother my mum. And there was one time when a certain church auntie came to visit, and she must have entered my room, and when she saw that I don't have a bed, that I was sleeping on the floor, she said that she would buy me a mattress and a bed. I don't mind sleeping on the floor, but this auntie insisted, and then she got me the bed. And I am grateful, don't get it twisted. But like now as we speak, I'm sleeping on the floor again. The bed is still there. I literally dismantled the bed and put my mattress back on the floor. I got so used to sleeping on the floor that it's become my new life now. Let me show you. I'm showing you my bed now. Like, I'm literally, the mattress is on the floor. Like, I'm not even joking. Wait, let me get my phone. I need the flashlight. Essentially, there's no light bulb in my room because I tried fixing my light bulb one day and then it fell. I guess I'm not into manual labor. Like, I was literally on a stool and I was trying to put in like a new light bulb, and I guess I didn't secure it enough, and then the whole thing fell, and then it shattered, and I haven't bought a new light bulb since. I guess I didn't see it as so important. It's really pretty, even has like, you know, a nice pattern and like this bowl there. I literally dismantled the bed. I literally had a bed after many years. I dismantled it and put my mattress back on the floor. You can sometimes get so accustomed, like I think I just got used to it after a while that I don't care. But like I said, I'll do a full house tour tomorrow so you guys can see the house in its entirety. But yeah, that was just my experience being homeless. This video was put on my heart to do. God knows why. I do believe the right people who are meant to see this video will see it, and hopefully it makes an impact. Hopefully it inspires people. One thing that I will say, please excuse the lighting. I know you can't see me, but we'll just have to do. In spite of what I've been through, the homelessness and the financial difficulties and all those things, I feel grateful for going through it. I feel grateful for knowing what it's like to go through poverty, even though I'm honestly still there, but you know, I'd love to be rich one day, in Jesus' name. I feel grateful to know what it's like to sleep on the floor. All these stresses and everything that I've been through, like I've said before, it just builds character. And in the day when my life does change, when I own my own house, because I know I'll own a house one day, when, you know, would no longer require government assistance, no longer having to live paycheck to paycheck, no longer having to call up these different companies, whether it's the gas company, the heating, the water, electric lights, whatever, because I know I've got enough money that monthly the payment is taken automatically with no issue, that I'm never behind on payments. In the day that my life has turned around, I'll be humbled in that I'll never forget where I came from. In the day that I start making good money of my own, not having to struggle or anything, I think I'll appreciate it all the more, because I know firsthand what it's like to not be able to afford your bill every month, to not know where the money is going to come from, to be anxious because you're getting all these scary letters. I know what it's like to not even be able to afford £5. Like, I really know the struggle, and I'm grateful. All of it has made me who I am today. But yeah, guys, thank you. If you watched this video to the end, please put a yellow love heart so I know you're a real one. Thank you for listening to my story.